Hello everyone, my name is Samruddhi. I'm from grade 7B. Today I'm going to talk about multiplication in plants. So, what are the two types of plant parts? Vegetative part and reproductive part. Vegetative part. These are concerned with nutrition and growth. They comprise of the roots, stems and leaves. Reproductive part. This is concerned with reproduction of the plant. It comprises of the flower. A plant may have both male and female parts born on the same flower, or they may be born by different flowers too. What is reproduction and types of reproduction in plants? The ability of all living organisms to produce new individuals of their own kind is called reproduction. So, there are two types of reproduction in plants: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, a mode of reproduction in which a new offspring is produced by a single parent. The individual produced are physically and genetically identical to each other, that is, they are clones of their parents. Sexual reproduction. It bears the male and female reproductive parts, the stamen and carpel, respectively. These reproductive parts may be borne by the same flower or separately in different male and female flowers. They produce the male and female gametes. Sexual reproduction involves production of new individual by the fusion of these male and female gametes to produce a zygote. Different types of asexual and sexual reproduction. Modes of reproduction: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction: vegetative propagation, budding, fragmentation, and spore formation. Sexual reproduction: pollination, fertilization, fruits and seed formation, seed dispersal. Different types of asexual reproduction. Budding. It takes place under normal conditions when the yeast cell grows in sugar solution. It, its cell produces one or more outgrowths called buds, which increase in size. The nucleus divides and one of them passes on to each bud. These buds ultimately cut off from the parent cell and are released as independent, identical copy of the parent. Budding may be repeated, resulting in the formation of one or more chains of bead-like cells. Fragmentation. Spirogyra, which is a green algae, reproduces rapidly. This asexual mode of reproduction on availability of nutrients in water. Here the filament breaks up into a number of short segments due to the force of water current or friction. Each segment then develops into a complete organism and they produce continuously. Spore formation is an asexual reproduction technique. Many spores are housed in sacs known as sporangia. The plant produces hundreds of spores and the spore sac bursts. These spores are dispersed into the air, where they germinate and create a new plant under favorable conditions. Vegetative propagation is a process in which plant reproduces from stem, roots and leaves. Runner. The most common example is grass. The runner arises as an axillary bud. It creeps horizontally some distance away from the mother plant, then strikes roots at the nodes and grows into a new plant. It may break off from the mother plant and grow as independent plant. Tuber. This is swollen end of the special underground stem. It arises from the axil of the lower leaf, becomes swollen with heavy store of the material. It has on its surface a number of eyes that grows into buds. A potato is an example of tuber. Rhizome. It is horizontally growing underground stem swollen with stored food. A rhizome bears distinct nodes, internodes, scaly leaves, and adventitious roots. It has buds on its surface which grows new plants. Ginger and turmeric are examples. Foliar buds. In Bryophyllum, rows of foliar buds are produced on the notch at the end of the leaf margins. These buds may drop from the leaf and grow up into new plants. Root tubers. These are swollen adventitious roots. Examples are dahlia and sweet potato. These roots have food stored in them. If root tuber of sweet potato is cut into pieces and sown in well soil, a new plant can be produced. Different types of sexual reproduction. Pollination. When anthers are mature, they rupture and burst open, releasing the pollen grains. Being tight are carried away by agents such as wind, water, insects, and animals. They land on the stigma of the same flower or a different flower. This transfer of pollen grains from an anther to a stigma is called pollination. There are two types of pollinations: self pollination and cross pollination. Self pollination. In this process, the transfer of pollen grains takes place from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or to the another flower on the same plant. Cross pollination. In this process, the pollen grains are transferred from another of one flower to stigma of another flower. Cross pollination takes place between flowers on different plants of the same species. Fertilization. Once a pollen grain has landed on the stigma of the same species, it germinates. A sugary solution is secreted by the stigma that stimulates the germination of the pollen tube carries the male gamete. After reaching the ovule, the tip of the tube bursts, releasing the male gamete. The male gamete fuses with female gamete. It forms a zygote. This process is called fertilization. Seed formation. After the formation of zygote, the petals, sepals, and stamens are removed and fall down. The style and the stigma also falls down. Only the ovary remains. It contains the fertilized ovule, which contains the zygote. The zygote begins to divide and form the embryo. Meanwhile, the wall of the ovule develops into hard layers. Thus, ovule develops into seeds consisting of a baby plant. The embryo contains one or two cotyledons with stored food. They are covered by hard protective seed coat. Fruit formation. All flowering plants are characteristic by having seeds enclosed by a fleshy covering the fruit. The fruit is ripened ovary. As seed formation proceeds, the ovary begins to swell and changes into fruit. Some fruit, like those of fleshy mangoes and sweet and juicy, others, like those of almond and walnut, become hard and dry. A fruit can have one or more seeds inside them. Seed dispersal. In the mechanism by which plant seeds are transposed to new sites for germination and the establishment of new individuals. Dispersal by wind. When dispersed seeds are light and dry, they may have one or more in the form of thin, flat, membranous wings, as in the drumstick and maple. In sunflower, the fruit is hairy and opens out the umbrella like fashion that helps it to float in air. The seeds of mother and cotton are also hairy. Dispersal by water. The seed and fruit to be dispersed by water usually develops by floating devices in the form of spongy or fibrous outer coats. The fibrous fruit of coconut is capable of floating long distances in sea without suffering any injury. In lotus, the spongy receptacle bearing the fruit on its top floats about in water and drifts according to the currents of water. Dispersal by animals. Many seeds and fruits are dispersed through the agency of animals, including human beings. Sometimes, when you walk to a grassy field, you may find seeds and fruits clinging to your clothes. Many fruits are provided with outgrowths like hooks, barbs, spines, bristles, and stiff hairs on their body. Such structure help them to stick to the body of woolly animals, and thus the seeds are carried to distant places. Dispersal by explosive mechanism. Many fruits burst when a sudden jerk. This results into seed being scattered far away from the parent plant. Common examples of explosive fruits are pea, castor, and etc. Other than sexual and asexual reproduction, you can grow plants by the process called artificial propagation. Cutting. This is a simple procedure in which a healthy young branch of a plant like rose and sugar cane having nodes and internodes is cut off and planted in moist soil. It produces roots and grows into a new plant. Grafting. This method is used to horticulture to develop new varieties of fruit plants. In this method, a healthy stem of one a rooted plant with a non-treated cut surface is inserted over the cut stem of another rooted plant. It is then tied together. After some days, new plant branches develop that shows a combined feature of two plants. Layering. Layering. In this method, a branch of the plant is bent towards the ground and covered by moist soil. After some time, roots develop from the covered part. The bent branch is later cut and made to grow a new plants like jasmine, bougainvillea are developed by this method. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.